A man breaks down in court after the judge does this to his little daughter. Keith and Jessica loved each other and were going to be parents until one day Jessica's parents threatened them. What happened next was never expected by the couple. Keith always had feelings for Jessica, but the thought of meeting her parents made him uneasy. Due to her pregnancy, it was significantly worse. Keith's palms were wet, and his brow was glossy with droplets of sweat. Before her parents could even speak, the look of utter discomfort on their faces spoke for them. Her parents disapproved of Jessica's choice. Jessica made an effort to convince her parents that Keith was a wonderful man and would take good care of her, but they were uninterested in hearing it. Until finally, he decided that Jessica wouldn't be marrying Keith. He wanted Jessica to get rid of the baby or give it up for adoption, or they would cut her off completely. He then commanded Keith to leave their house and never come back. Jessica loved Keith, but she couldn't get her father's comments out of her mind. Because they needed her parents' assistance to raise a child. She was unemployed, and Keith was making a pitiful living. She was devastated and realized she was making the wrong decision even as she watched her partner be kicked out of their home. With his vision cloudy and his thinking foggy, Keith left the mansion. What had just occurred was beyond his wildest imagination. He had no right to make decisions for his baby, so he sat down at his apartment and researched the way forward. Later, he learned about the Responsible Father Registry, which would alert him if his child was ever placed for adoption. In the hopes that it might work, he registered. He learned via the registry some months later that Jessica had placed their child up for adoption. He was astonished to hear that Jessica had already given birth and had sought a foster home for their child, despite the fact that he was aware of her impending delivery. When Keith found out that his baby's name was Emma, he was determined to raise her. He got in touch with a lawyer and described the situation to him. Nearly giving up, Keith. Finally, it was his last day in court. The judge's opportunity to determine the fate of his child was here. If he could just convince the judge, he knew deep down that he would make a great father to that little girl. But soon he would understand the fate of himself and his child. Keith assured the judge that he would be the finest father to his daughter when it was his turn to speak. Even though he had never met her, he would love her because the previous few months had been the worst of his life. If given the chance, he would present his child to the world and make all of his efforts to provide her with happiness and an easy life. He went on to declare that he had not left his child. He would never abandon his child. The courthouse doors opened, and Jessica entered the chamber before he could say anything else. Everyone in the courtroom recognized her as the mother of the child, which caused a ruckus. Keith had every intention of getting married and starting a family together. However, her parents threatened her and made her give up Emma and leave him. "I've never wanted to participate in it." The entire jury room was in disbelief. Keith's narrative had not been accepted, but it now appeared that he had been telling the truth all along. The judge turned to face Jessica before saying, "Well then, it looks like Keith here was only being truthful. With that, I declare Keith to be Emma's legal guardian, and reverse the adoption decision." Keith was overjoyed. He found it impossible to believe what was happening. Finally, he could have his daughter and show her all the love in the world.